Hello again and welcome to another episode of the Franchise Everything podcast where we talk about everything and anything franchising. You can hear in the background probably where we're at a live event this time, and it's the Franchise Everything podcast at the Franchising and Business Opportunities Expo, or almost mucked that up. And we're joined by Tiffany English, who's the CEO and founder of Access Offshoring.
You got that right.
I did. Woohoo! Tiffany, how are you going?
Hi, I'm really good. How are you?
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And we are going to talk about how to scale up your franchise while leveraging and using offshore talent, which is your thing, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Tell me about Access Offshoring. Tell me about what it is and how you got into it and where we're at.
Yeah, so holistically, Access Offshoring works with Philippines-based staff, and we place them both at franchisor level and franchisee across a variety of businesses, basically as support roles to help leverage you, your time and your money, hopefully.
So you've not just franchising, you've been doing it for a whole bunch of other businesses, haven't you?
Yeah,
through the years. And when did you start getting into offshoring?
I recruited my first offshore staff member probably about 15, 16 years ago now. So it's been a while.
Well, you're an early adopter.
I was an early adopter. I have a background in business improvement, so it was really important to me that I leveraged ways that I could essentially make myself redundant in the exec management roles that I was in. And talent was a huge part of that, and offshoring was an even bigger part. So that's how it all started.
But you were a franchisor as well, were you?
I had a consulting business that I franchised before I sold.
So you know all about it. You already know all about it. Yeah, excellent. And what was that journey like, franchising that?
Yeah, it was really interesting. For me, that consulting business was all about how do I obtain the best talent and how do I keep them. And I had a really big philosophy of we are the stepping stone and you develop as much as you can, and I want you to get further.
Yeah.
And so a lot of our team members would then move on to their own ventures. And so for me, franchising was a way of being able to keep them embedded, find the best people, keep the best people, but still be able to develop them and give them skills that would help them grow and in turn help the franchisor.
Excellent. So speaking of talent, what sort of talent is out there? So because I mean, everyone's been on Airtasker and all that sort of stuff there. So what do you see? What's there?
Yeah. So when you're looking at any country, I mean, Australia as much as Philippines or any country for that matter, the talent is pretty vast. And it's all about who you're looking for and where you look for them and also how you look for them. So the Philippines has a huge population. We're talking well over 100 million people. You would expect that there's talent that dives deep into any role that you could probably find in an Australian market. You've then just got to work out what talent you need for your business. So, and we're talking anything from back office data entry roles right through to senior managers helping lead teams of people and anything in between. So I know you and I have spoken a bit about the specifics. So it's from things like accounts and back office support through to designers and marketing specialists. There's people that sit behind the scenes and help with businesses like yours to help them editing and podcasting. And then you go right up to roles like we have lawyers, we have draftees, we have construction administrators, and a lot of data technical roles as well.
So what are the barriers to that? I mean, do people still feel it difficult to let go to have offshore, say, accounting, bookkeeping, legal? What do potential clients tell you in Australia?
Yeah, so I guess there's two parts to that. One, as a business owner, there is always this element of relinquishing control that comes with business ownership. And once you start to grow and expand your team, that starts to get easier. And that doesn't matter if that's a role in Australia or if that's a role that you're going to get offshore. There's an element once you've started to relinquish control, every step is a bit easier. Secondary to that, the really specific roles that are critical to business functions like accounts or law, they're really critical hires. And so a lot of the time what happens is the business is in a position where they have a skill set locally to help be able to quality control the work. And they utilize something like a Philippines market to really help them leverage time and talent. And initially they may start as support roles and very quickly work their way up. So that tends to be how they walk through the process and develop a bit of comfort.
So slow
and steady.
Yeah, they don't release it too quickly.
No.
So what types of engagement do you have? Because you pulled me up on, what was it, the difference between, I didn't know the difference between outsourcing and offshoring.
Yeah.
Can you talk me through the types of engagement and what the differences are?
Yeah, so I pretty much define it in 4 different ways that you can source talent from any country.
Yep.
And there's a time and a place for each. So offshoring is what we do. That is where we're essentially recruiting a full-time dedicated team member. They join your team and they act like one of your own. There is someone else managing compliance and labour law, which we might talk about a bit later, but essentially they're your team member.
Yep.
Outsourcing is different in the fact that you're generally providing task by task or project by project work. You've got much more flexibility in the fact that you're like, hey, I just need this one thing done. Can you make it happen? They tend to be a group of people that are doing the work on your behalf, but you've got less of the management. So you don't have to control them, which in some cases works really well, and you've got more flexibility with time. And then you've got agencies and you've got freelancers. So freelancers are the websites you listed off before. There's Upwork, there's freelancers, there's lots of them. You can go and find someone to help you with something specific. You are doing your own vetting. They're a freelancer. They're working for many. And then finally, agencies will give you a little bit more flexibility and, hey, give me 5 hours a week. I need some help with lead gen.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of options out there. What are the common mistakes you normally see people make? So a small business owner in Australia or medium-sized business, where do you see things go wrong for them and offshoring or even outsourcing turns sour for them?
So I think the first thing is you need to identify what capacity you need in-house and how much capacity you have to lead that person. So if you are still starting up and you have a relatively small business, it might even be you may be at a point where you don't have the capacity to manage, or you don't have the skill set for what you're trying to utilize an offshore person for, in which case something like an agency or an outsourced model is far more beneficial. You just don't have the internal capacity to support someone as part of your team or to feed them 40 hours worth of work a week. But when you start to grow, often businesses grow out of those agencies and those outsourcing options because they're starting to build a team culture.
Yeah, starting to get internal,
You're
doesn't
starting
it?
to get internal, and you want to bring that in-house, and it becomes more affordable to do so. And so understanding where that path, where you're going to walk that path, I think is a really big factor. And if you're going down a freelance path, I think this is where I get the most complaints, is that they've gone down a freelance path, but they've tried to embed them as a full-time resource.
Just not that it's like square peg round hole.
A freelancer doesn't want to be with one client for 40 hours a week. And so now they're just juggling multiple tasks by multiple clients and probably disappointing everybody.
So it's the wrong hire to start with, isn't it?
100%. So it's not just hire the right person, it's understand what strategy you need and what type of offshoring or outsourcing is best for you, and then dive deep.
And I would think, because we've done some, sorry, I was going to say offshoring. We've done some outsourcing before. I get it right. And now I think back on it, and I think I didn't lead them well enough. And I picture that person sitting in the Philippines thinking, well, what am I doing next? When's some next work going to come up? Might be just sitting there waiting for sometimes 1 or 2 hours.
Yeah.
And of course, when you ping them, you say, well, why haven't you responded, in 2 minutes? Yeah, well, because you didn't talk to me for the last 2 hours.
Yeah.
What do you hear from those who are on the other end of it, who are providing support? What are their pain points? What do they go through? Because I think it probably gets lost a bit.
Yeah, it does. So there's a few factors around cultural engagement. And so an area that I educate a lot on is the difference between cultural work environments, particularly in the Philippines, because that's where I specialize, and how we operate as businesses in Australia. And there are elements where they are polar opposite, and a Filipino will recognize that pretty heavily. And some of them will be able to adapt and some will really struggle. And so the education piece is, how can an Australian business really understand how a Filipino generally works in a Philippines environment and adapt the way they manage and lead to build a high-performing team member? We're not just talking about developing a grunt team sitting in another country, because you'll never get longevity. You just won't keep retention. And so to build high-performing teams, there has to be a level of to and fro. And same with Philippines. They need to learn how Aussie businesses operate. So a really big difference is a Filipino will say, hey, there's some things that I think I could do for you, Glenn, but I couldn't say that, because in a Philippines business, if they were to jump in and suggest a change in the process, it's very disrespectful to their superior. However, us as Australian businesses tend to say, I demand initiative. And so when you take someone out of an environment where if they show initiative, they've probably got a target on their back and they're not going to last, and you put them with an Australian business owner that's like, what do you mean you've done? Like, give me some ideas. Tell me what we should do. It's polar opposite.
Yeah.
And so they may have ideas, but they don't know how to raise them with you. So you just simply have to develop a culture in-house of asking a lot of open-ended questions and encourage that thought-provoking nature.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So with managing a person in the Philippines, say on a day-to-day basis, what does best practice look like?
Yeah.
So practically, you're checking in with them at 9 o'clock in the morning. What have they got tasks for the day? How do you see it work best? Because obviously you would engage a lot.
A lot, yeah.
What's it look like?
One of the big things is I do find that when there's a team, i.e. 2 or more Philippines working with one business, you do get better retention. And that's because they develop that connection,
yeah.
Correct. But in terms of where I see the best businesses manage high-performing Philippines teams, they always start with a huddle. Now, the Aussies don't always have to be in that. I don't attend every single one of my huddles, but it can be anywhere from 5 to 7 minutes. It's just a quick, what have you got on today? What issues do you need my help with? The second thing is it's a really good idea to have an end-of-day report. Just really understand what they're up to and what they've been stuck on. Because then you're able to provide the support, and your job as a business owner should be to remove roadblocks. That's no different wherever they're located. And then make sure you got touch points. Video calls in terms of how you're providing tasks is a really effective way to communicate with someone in another country. It also builds that connection. So I think just if you have check-in points at top and tail end, and you've got the ability for them to communicate with you at some point throughout the day, you'll achieve pretty great things.
Okay, so that rolls nicely into probably things about compliance and responsibilities and everything of the Australian employer back here. How does that work in regards to Philippines? So is it typical to have your own contracts, like a generic contract in place, or how does that work in ensuring that you're adhering to labour laws in their country to start with as well?
Yeah, correct. And look, there's a lot of ways that people approach this. With an offshoring provider, if you've gone with a correct offshoring provider, we are required to have a Philippines entity.
Okay.
And so we employ them under a Philippines entity, which means we're able to pay salaries effectively, but we also contribute to all the government mandated benefits, which I won't bore you on, but if you want to know more, come see me. And also Philippines taxes. So we're contributing to the government economy as much as we're contributing to the individuals. And what that does is that enables us to ensure we're abiding by Philippines labour law, but also our staff are. And it creates a lot more confidence for the Australian business because there's compliance in place.
Yeah.
And it's less likely that a Filipino can just fall off the radar,
yeah.
Which can happen.
Which happens in freelancer type tasks.
And it's freelancer tasks where you don't have the control. When
someone's got the keys to your website.
Correct.
And they just disappear.
You've got no contract in place.
Yeah.
And even if you did, you've got no ability to actually follow through on that contract because you're an Australian business and they're under Philippines legislation.
Yeah.
So there's some elements there that are helpful for you to understand. And if you go through outsourcing businesses, they tend to have a good handle on that. But that compliance piece is a really big factor. So that's what we manage for the business. We recruit them, we hire them, we manage payroll, HR, compliance, even IT hardware, and the Australian business gets a full-time resource and a Australian bill.
So just to give people an idea, what is the typical cost saving that you see? So when we look at types of roles, and I think that's the $1 million question for everyone is, how much do I save or whatever in employing here to employing overseas? Can you give us some insight into that?
Yeah, and every country is different. So speaking just on the Philippines, you are working on about a third of the cost if you allow for all of the on-cost you'd pay for a local resource. What's really fascinating about that, so you'd have roles that start from as little as, $1,500 a month for a full-timer, and you'll have some people that are paid $4,000 a month because they would be getting paid heavy money here in Australia. What I find really fascinating, and I'd love to just hijack this slightly, is that I get so many questions. I know. I'm surprised I haven't already.
It's your time. This is your floor.
But people always say to me, the next question that always follows with how much do I save is, but we're losing jobs here. And there is so much research, and I'm so passionate about it because I see it with our clients day in, day out. The stats show that if you actually build an offshore team, your ability to increase local opportunities by about 30%. Because you're able to do it with less risk, less cost. You're able to build foundations quicker, and therefore you're able to build out your Australian team, the client-facing, the strategy, which you wouldn't have otherwise been able to do.
So do you get that a lot? Do you get a lot of people say you should be hiring here instead of over there?
Yeah, we do.
People have a go at you for it?
Yeah, and I think that's fine. I agree, right? There's an element, absolutely, you want to keep jobs locally. They also just have a way bigger population than we do.
Yeah.
So my ability to attract talent over there is far easier than here.
Yeah.
But I watch our clients and I watch once they start building out their Philippines teams, how more effectively they're able to build out their local teams and how quickly they're able to scale, but with sustainable growth. Like you are building sustainable growth this way. So it's fascinating.
Yeah, and this builds to almost the social responsibility part as well. I know we've talked about that a little bit there. So is that social responsibility there part of that discussion about being able to grow and employ locally here as well, and also looking after those people in other countries as well, or you're providing channels for people to live a pretty significantly better life than they would otherwise have had.
You just have no idea the impact.
Yeah.
By hiring one Filipino, the impact that you have to them individually, their entire family and their community is significant. And last night I got an email from someone who found me on my TikTok channel. She reached out. We offered her a job and she emailed me last night to say, Tiff, I can't tell you how grateful I am. We were at a point where our parents had actually left the family home and my sister and I were left to fend for ourselves. We had no money, no support, and I was coming out of university as a graduate. You bet on me and we kept our house.
Wow.
And so it's emails like that
very satisfying.
that I'm like, that's why I do what I do.
Yeah, and it's interesting because we would all love to hire more and more and more people here in Australia. But I look in my instance in video production and everything, for me to hire a local editor full time, I don't have $70,000 a year, $75,000 a year to put in one editor here to do spotty work at different times.
And they're hard to keep.
It gives enormous flexibility to be able to do some offshoring for some tasks.
Yeah, and roles like that are often hard to retain locally because they want variety, they want growth, and you don't always have that in those roles. You just need the job done.
I need that task done.
And that task is going to exist forever.
I'm not sorry, you want a promotion? I don't have any jobs to promote you to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when you've then got that ability to just get some of that more support-based stuff done offshore, you really do leverage.
Yeah, ability to scale up and frees you up.
Absolutely, yeah.
Excellent. That's a great chat. I think that just gives us a little bit of a teaser and a bit of a taste there into offshoring. Tiffany, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. That's it again on the Franchise Everything podcast. I hope you liked this and enjoyed this and all this sort of information. It's a little bit different information this time there, giving the ability. We've talked about promotions today and how to make more sales in franchises, and this one is about efficiency and productivity and making you more profitable as a business owner, whether it be a franchise or a non-business. If you like this sort of stuff, please subscribe, share, tell everyone about it, and we'll catch you in the next one soon.